Before you decide that an avoidant person is too complicated, too walls up, or too emotionally out of reach to ever really connect with, there is something you need to understand first. They do not respond to love the way most people do. Pouring on more attention does not automatically draw them closer. Chasing harder does not make you more appealing to them. And pushing with more emotional intensity almost always has the exact opposite effect of what you are hoping for. That right there is where most people lose the connection before it ever had a real chance to grow. Because the kind of love that actually gets through to an avoidant is not the loudest kind. It is not the most dramatic or the most relentless. It is not about proving how worthy you are until they finally decide to let you in. What actually reaches them lives in a much quieter and much more powerful place. It is psychological in nature. It is the feeling of being close to someone without being controlled by them, of feeling safe without being suffocated, of being wanted without being emotionally drowned. That is the real key. And once you genuinely understand it, everything about the dynamic starts to look different. In this video, we are going deep into the hidden things that actually attract an avoidant and make them stop retreating and start leaning toward you instead. Some of what you are about to hear will genuinely surprise you. Some of it might completely shift the way you understand love and connection altogether. And the last point is one of the most powerful of all because it speaks directly to the one fear that avoidant people almost never name out loud. So stay with me because this goes far beyond just attraction. This is really about what makes someone who has built a life around emotional distance begin to want closeness, begin to trust it, and maybe even commit to it in a way they never believed was possible for them. Most people walk into a connection with an avoidant assuming that the same things that attract anyone else will work here too. Be more charming, be more available, be more loving and endlessly patient. But here is what those people do not realize. For someone who is genuinely wired to protect themselves from emotional overwhelm, those very moves can start to feel like pressure, like a slow trap closing in, even when the intention behind them is completely pure. Constant attention from someone can start to feel heavy rather than sweet. Reassurance that comes too fast can actually feel suspicious. An emotional intensity that moves too quickly can trigger their defenses even when there is nothing wrong with the person giving it. That is why so many genuinely good-hearted people end up confused. They are giving everything and watching the other person pull back anyway. They ask themselves, why is this not working? And the painful but honest answer is that they may be offering love in a form the avoidant does not know how to receive without feeling unsafe. Avoidant people are far more drawn in by what quiets their internal alarm system than by what looks romantically impressive from the outside. They are not only asking whether they like you, they are also asking a deeper set of questions under the surface. Can I breathe around you? Can I be near you and still feel like myself? Can I care about you without it turning into a weight I have to carry forever? That is the real evaluation happening beneath every interaction. And when you understand that, the whole dynamic starts making sense in a way it never did before. The energy that actually opens an avoidant is one that communicates something rare. It says, I care about you deeply, but I am not here to consume you or trap you. That energy cannot be performed. It cannot be faked for long. It has to actually come from a real place inside you. And when it does, they feel it, even if they never say so directly. The first and perhaps most powerful thing that draws an avoidant in is genuine emotional independence. Nothing lands more deeply than being with someone who is warm, present, and fully alive as their own person. The reason this matters so much is that avoidant people often carry a quiet but constant fear of becoming emotionally responsible for someone else's inner world. They worry that love will eventually become pressure, that closeness will turn into obligation, that someone's happiness will slowly become a weight they are expected to carry. So when they meet a person who already has their own sense of peace, their own purpose, their own daily life and internal center, it genuinely surprises them in the best possible way. You are not cold to them. You are not pushing them away. You are simply grounded. You enjoy their company, but you are not falling apart without them. You miss them when they are gone, but you do not lose yourself waiting for them to return. That energy speaks volumes without needing any words. It says, I am choosing you, and I am still choosing myself at the same time. For an avoidant, that feels both safe and deeply attractive. It removes the fear that loving you will require them to give up who they are. It opens a door to connection that does not feel like it will cost them their freedom. And that is when real attraction starts building, not because you are emotionally distant, but because your steadiness makes closeness feel like something they can actually step into. There is also mystery and a certain natural unpredictability that matters more than most people give it credit for. Avoidant people live a great deal of their lives inside their own minds. They observe patterns, they read situations, they quietly calculate how close things might get and how difficult it would be to step back if they needed to. So when someone becomes fully transparent too fast, fully available at every moment, and emotionally present at every single turn without ever pulling back even slightly, the avoidant mind can relax in the wrong direction. There is no tension, no open space, no room to wonder. But when your life has genuine depth to it, when you are not handing over every layer of yourself in the first few interactions, when you are present, but also sometimes simply occupied with your own world, something changes in them. They start leaning in mentally before the emotional leaning ever happens. They replay things you said. They think about you when you are not around. They sense there is more to discover, and that open space becomes its own quiet form of attraction. This is not about games. It is not about being artificially mysterious or withholding to create fake intrigue. It is about actually having a life that does not orbit entirely around being chosen by them. That creates real value and real curiosity. And once an avoidant becomes genuinely curious about you, emotional distance starts feeling a lot less comfortable than it used to. Calm confidence during conflict is another enormous pull, and this one deserves your full attention. Avoidant people often go into any kind of tension or disagreement already bracing for what they expect, which is emotional chaos. They anticipate blame. They prepare for dramatic reactions, desperate responses, or long and heavy emotional scenes that leave everyone feeling worse than before. That anticipation alone can make them start withdrawing, even before the conflict has fully arrived. So when disagreement or tension shows up and you remain calm, clear, and respectful, you change the entire emotional atmosphere of the moment. You are not pleading. You are not flooding the space with emotion. You are not demanding resolution before either of you have had a chance to breathe. You are simply steady. You say what is true for you without making the situation feel like a threat. That kind of emotional groundedness can be genuinely disarming to an avoidant because it contradicts everything they have come to expect from closeness. Instead of feeling cornered, they find a little space. Instead of feeling like they need to defend themselves, they begin to sense that maybe honesty can actually survive inside this connection. And that matters enormously because avoidant people are not only afraid of closeness itself. A large part of what they fear is what closeness turns into when emotions run high. Your composure during those moments does not just look attractive. It actually feels healing on a deeper level. It teaches their nervous system something new. That honesty between two people does not have to end in collapse. It can end in understanding, in mutual respect, even in deeper trust. And once they experience that with you, something in their interior world begins to soften in a way they may not even fully notice right away. Strong and clear personal boundaries are another powerful draw, and this is where a lot of people get things exactly backward. Many people assume that being endlessly easygoing will make them more lovable, that saying yes to everything proves their dedication, or that being available around the clock demonstrates how much they care. But for an avoidant, consistently weak or absent boundaries do not feel like devotion. They often feel heavy. They can even feel unsafe. The reason for this is that when someone has no real limits around their time, their emotional energy, or their own standards, an avoidant may sense that the relationship is moving toward something too fused, too consuming, and too difficult to step back from if needed. On the other hand, when you are someone who can say no calmly, hold your ground without becoming cruel or cold, and clearly know what is and is not acceptable for you, the whole dynamic shifts. Boundaries communicate self-respect. They signal emotional maturity. They show the avoidant that you are not looking to disappear entirely into the relationship, and that quietly is deeply attractive to someone who fears being consumed or made responsible for carrying more than they are able to hold. The truth is uncomplicated. An avoidant is far more likely to genuinely respect someone who clearly respects themselves. If they get the sense that they can bend your needs, come and go without any real consequence, or keep you waiting indefinitely without it costing them anything, they may stay emotionally lazy. but when they experience someone who is both kind and clear, loving and firm, caring and centered, something shifts in how they see the connection. You stop being a soft place to avoid growth. You start feeling like someone real, someone worth showing up for. One of the deepest draws of all is your ability to stay emotionally grounded when they pull back from you. This particular moment reveals everything about the pattern, because avoidant people frequently create distance when feelings start to deepen. Sometimes it is a conscious choice. Sometimes it is entirely automatic, something their nervous system does without their full awareness. Sometimes they genuinely need room to regulate. Sometimes, without fully realizing it, they are quietly testing what closeness with you is going to cost them. If your response to their withdrawal is panic, obsessive texting, emotional chasing, or desperate attempts to force them back into connection, their deepest fear gets confirmed right in front of them. Closeness equals pressure. Love equals the loss of freedom. But when you remain warm, grounded, and simply connected to your own life while they take their space, the whole story changes. You are not shutting them out. You are not punishing them with silence. You are simply refusing to abandon yourself just because they took a step back. That response is quietly powerful in ways that are hard to overstate. It creates a new kind of emotional experience for them. Instead of feeling the need to retreat even further, they begin to feel your steadiness. They start to sense that this bond might not be the trap they feared, and in a way that feels both strange and very real, your calmness can actually make them more aware of you rather than less. They see that their inconsistency does not control your center. That is when respect and desire often begin to grow at the same time. Intellectual and mental stimulation is another hidden pull that does not get nearly enough attention. Avoidant people frequently process emotion through thought before they can process it through feeling. They analyze, they observe, they find ways to make sense of emotional experience by first running it through logic. So when they meet someone who can genuinely engage their mind, the attraction they feel is immediate and crucially feels safe. Depth of conversation, surprising perspective, intelligence delivered with warmth, emotional clarity expressed in a way that makes sense to the mind, these things create a bridge into closeness that does not feel invasive or demanding. That is why a real late-night conversation that goes somewhere unexpected can stay with an avoidant far longer than a dramatic emotional declaration ever would. A person who challenges their thinking, opens new mental territory, and speaks with both substance and genuine presence becomes genuinely hard to let go of. And the most important thing about this is that intellectual connection often becomes the actual pathway to emotional connection. First, they admire your depth, then they begin to trust your presence. Then slowly they start lowering their guard and showing pieces of themselves they normally keep hidden. That is how the bond actually builds with an avoidant, not through emotional force, but through a kind of layered discovery that they can move through at a pace that does not feel threatening. Self-respect and selective availability stir something deep in them as well. An avoidant tends to pull back from someone who appears to have organized their entire emotional world around being chosen. If you drop everything the moment they call, cancel whatever you had going on just to be available, or make their moods the emotional weather of your day, the attraction can quietly fade. The dynamic becomes too predictable, too controlled, and ultimately too easy to take for granted. But when your life remains genuinely full, when your time has real meaning, when your attention is offered with intention rather than desperation, they begin to feel the weight and rarity of your presence. And rarity, whether we like admitting it or not, creates real value. This is not a performance. It is not about acting distant to generate artificial interest. It is about living in a way that keeps your dignity intact. You make room for them, but they can feel that your world does not disappear without them in it. That feeling quietly invites them to rise rather than simply coast. It reminds them that time with you is something to be genuinely valued, not casually assumed. Most people believe that chasing harder is what creates movement in this kind of dynamic. But sometimes what actually generates movement is not giving more. It is making it unmistakably clear that your energy means something. An avoidant may never say this directly, but they feel it. They feel when someone carries quiet standards, and that feeling has a way of staying with them long after the conversation ends. Healthy vulnerability, expressed without pressure, is another major turning point. Avoidant people often associate vulnerability with chaos, with emotional obligation, with being silently held responsible for someone else's pain. So when feelings are expressed in ways that feel like demand or collapse, or that carry some hidden pressure to respond in a particular way, they tend to retreat fast. But when you are able to share something real about yourself from a grounded place, everything changes. You say what you feel without framing it as something they need to fix. You open yourself without making your honesty into a burden they are required to carry. You are transparent and still whole at the same time. That is genuinely disarming to an avoidant. It shows them that intimacy does not have to mean emotional overwhelm. It can look like truth, real closeness, and still leave room to breathe. This kind of openness gives them an entirely new model for what connection can feel like. They begin to understand that someone can be real and emotionally present without becoming too much. And once that understanding settles in, something in them softens. Not overnight, not dramatically, but piece by piece. That is how real trust actually builds with an avoidant. Not through emotional pressure, but through consistently safe examples that prove closeness does not have to cost them everything. Playfulness and genuine emotional lightness can move past walls faster than serious intensity almost ever will. Avoidant people often carry a quiet background tension inside relationships. Even when they like someone and want to be close to them, some part of them may already be bracing for the emotional weight they expect to arrive eventually. So when you bring real humor, natural ease, warmth, laughter, and a touch that feels light rather than loaded, you cut straight through that guarded readiness. Suddenly, love does not feel like a performance or a pressure test. It feels alive. It feels like something they can enjoy without needing to manage or defend against. A shared moment of genuine laughter can do something that 10 heavy conversations cannot. Lightness builds safety in ways that seriousness sometimes simply cannot reach. When closeness starts to feel like relief and fun and real spark rather than obligation, an avoidant begins to stop associating love with heaviness. They experience something different, and they come back to it. They actually want more of it. That shift is powerful, because now they are not being pulled toward closeness. They are walking toward it because it genuinely feels good to be there. Do not underestimate the power of someone who can make an avoidant feel both safe and alive in the same moment. And then there is the thing that reaches the deepest nerve of all, your willingness to walk away with your dignity fully intact. This might feel uncomfortable to hear at first, but it is one of the most genuinely powerful forces in this entire dynamic. Avoidant people often stop fully valuing what they sense will always be available no matter how little they give. If they feel sure that you will stay through endless inconsistency, through mixed signals and long silences and emotional scraps, there is no urgency for them to grow, no real reason to face the parts of themselves that keep love at arm's length. But when they realize that you are someone who loves deeply and will still leave if the connection becomes genuinely unhealthy, something real wakes up in them. Respect, urgency, a sudden and very clear awareness of what they are actually risking losing. Not the anxious kind of fear that makes them shut down further, but the kind of clarity that reveals just how much your presence actually weighs. You are no longer someone they can casually take for granted. You are someone whose love has real value precisely because it is not unconditional in a way that demands nothing in return. For an avoidant, that shift in perception can be the moment the entire dynamic changes, because the question is no longer whether they can maintain distance and still keep you. The question becomes whether they are willing to lose someone genuinely rare because they could not stop hiding. And that question, once it becomes real to them, changes things faster than almost anything else ever could. Everything that has been said here shares one central truth. None of it feeds the avoidance fear. All of it calms that fear without requiring you to make yourself smaller in the process. Emotional independence shows them that love does not have to become dependence. Mystery shows them that curiosity can keep connection alive. Calm during conflict shows them that honesty does not have to destroy. Boundaries show them that intimacy does not have to erase identity. Groundedness during withdrawal shows them that distance is not the same as abandonment. Mental engagement gives them a safe door into closeness. Selective availability shows them what real value feels like. Healthy openness shows them truth without flooding. Playfulness shows them that love can be light. And dignity shows them that your presence is not something they are free to waste indefinitely. Put all of that together, and commitment stops looking like a cage to an avoidant. It starts to look like something they might actually be capable of choosing. And this is where so many people miss the point entirely. These are not tricks. They are not psychological games designed to manipulate someone into pursuing you. They are the natural qualities of a person who is genuinely centered and genuinely whole. If you try to fake them, the energy breaks and the avoidant will feel it. If you actually embody them, the effect is real and lasting. Because an avoidant is not only responding to what you do, they are responding to how you feel to be around, to your emotional structure, to the atmosphere your presence creates, and that cannot be manufactured. There is one more layer that matters if you want to hold all of this clearly. What pulls an avoidant in is almost always the opposite of what drives them away. They are pushed away by pressure disguised as love, by emotional pursuit that feels like quiet demand, by people who say they are just being honest, but are actually releasing pain in a way that turns closeness into something exhausting, by people who have no real inner life, no real limits, no identity beyond the relationship itself, by affection that arrives with invisible strings attached. When those patterns appear in a connection, an avoidant's nervous system recognizes them and responds the only way it knows. It creates distance. It makes withdrawal feel safer than staying. And that is why the real work here is not about finding the right thing to say once. It is about becoming genuinely steady in a way that persists over time. Consistency is one of the least celebrated and most powerful things you can bring to this kind of dynamic. When your warmth stays warm, when your standards hold steady, when your emotional tone does not rise and fall dramatically based on their every move, they begin to notice. Slowly, quietly, but deeply. Trust with an avoidant is never built in one single romantic moment. It is built across many smaller experiences that repeatedly tell them this connection is not here to trap me or consume me or shame me into someone I am not. That realization takes real time. But when it finally lands, it creates some of the strongest bonds an avoidant has ever felt. And here is what matters most, especially if you are tired and a little worn down from trying to decode mixed signals and hoping it will eventually turn into something solid. Understanding what attracts an avoidant does not mean hollowing yourself out to fit their comfort zone. The core message is this: lasting love with an avoidant person is not built through chasing, overgiving, or abandoning your own needs to keep the connection alive. What truly creates change is showing up as someone emotionally grounded, self-respecting, and whole. Someone who offers warmth without losing boundaries and closeness without surrendering themselves. Avoidants begin to open when love feels safer than the walls they built, when they experience a connection that balances care with freedom and honesty without pressure. Real attraction grows not from desperation, but from self-honoring love that quietly inspires maturity and reveals whether the other person is truly capable of meeting you in a healthy mutual relationship.